Hello, school leaders. It's so nice to have you back here. In this particular module, we're going to be looking at preparing teachers. How do we prepare our teachers? How do we position them? How do we give them the resources to ensure that when they begin to create their remote and blended teaching and learning plans, they do it properly? That's what we're going to be looking at today. And why do we need to prepare our teachers? Nobody knew COVID-19 was going to happen. Nobody knew the riots that we have seen across the world was going to happen. Nobody could imagine just how disruptive the effects of these two that I have mentioned, plus natural disasters, were going to be to teaching, to learning, and to our education sector in general. We cannot sit down and do nothing whilst the education sector takes a back seat. That is the reason why the Office of Education Quality Assurance, and supported by Holistic Business Solutions and Global School Leaders, put together this training session. Going through this training session, you are equipped with the tools, the skills, and the mindsets ready to prepare your teachers to take their place even as they begin to prepare a remote and blended teaching plan. Now let's get into it. You will have to agree that when you start to think about creating a blended and remote teaching and learning plan, the role played by teachers is critical. And so you cannot even think about starting this entire process without thinking about how you're going to prepare your teachers. It is extremely important that as a school leader, you invest sufficient time in preparing your teachers. One way is, of course, this toolkit. And just by using this toolkit and giving it to them, it empowers them in their planning. The first thing you need to understand is, as you go about preparing your teachers and as you go about using this toolkit as a resource to prepare them, is you must think very carefully about what training and what resources the teachers would need. Some of this would flow from the questions that you were asking about what was challenging for them or what will they find to be challenging. In looking at the answers that the teachers give you, you would begin to formulate a training plan for them. You would begin to look at the resources that they might require, and you begin to point them in the direction to get it or find it and collate it for them such that when they begin to plan, it is at their fingertips and they can begin to use. One thing that you can do, of course, is to go to the Lagos Learn Together website and spend some time looking at it. That would help you immensely in terms of resources. Taking time to review this toolkit will help you immensely in terms of training. The second thing you need to look at is ask yourself, what head start can I give my teachers by sharing with them the resources that I have? This would help them manage learning in the short term. Thus, they would have a bit more time to spend in creating a long-term lesson plan. You need to remember that your teachers are going to have to look through the curriculum. They're going to have to determine what are the learning outcomes that must be prioritized. When you think about all of this, it takes time. It takes time for them to look at what they have for this academic year. It takes time for them to take a peek into what they need for the next academic year in terms of the next grade level that their current students are going to be going to. For them to do that, it will take them time. So if you're not preparing them, if you're not supporting them in the short term, for them to get into that long-term planning, it might be increasingly difficult for them. So you need to give your teachers a head start by sharing resources with them. This would help them in management of time and in freeing up time such that they can begin to plan very intentionally for the long term. The very third thing that you need to look at is motivation. This is not an easy process. It is definitely more difficult to teach in person than to teach online, especially when you think about teaching in person and online, which is via blended learning format. It is easy to give feedback to students in person than remotely. All of these things make even planning for this and implementing this new structure difficult. Your teachers need to be motivated. If you have worked for a length of time with teachers, you would find that once something is even slightly different from what they're used to, they tend to want to say that they cannot do it. You cannot allow your teachers get into that frame of mind of saying, I can't. You must be there for them to teach, to mentor, to coach, to support. You must be there to keep their motivation high such that they keep going even as they are creating these plans for your school system. As you begin to use this toolkit, it is once again important for you to remember that you're not doing this by yourself. So you do have a team. Your team is made up of your teachers, the students, and the parents. The focus in this particular session is how you're going to prepare your teachers. And the first thing that you need to think about is transition. How do you manage the transition from in-person, from emergency learning to a remote and blended learning format? That is something that you need to begin to think about. There is the teacher preparation guide, which has been given to you prior. Please pull it out and begin to have a discussion with your teachers about this. Plan how you're going to show them what to do, how they're going to use it. I mean, if you remember in the preparation guides, there was an area for short-term planning and an area for long-term planning, an area for technology, an area for student-led, for teacher-led sessions. You need to begin to show all of this to your teachers. You need to begin to get their minds ready for the work that is ahead. But most importantly, you need to get them involved in the process with you. The transition is not just for you, the school leader. It is for the teachers as well. And they need to be ready with that to get into that transition. They need to be ready with the things they need to do, understanding of what needs to be done, when it needs to be done, and the how of getting it done. So it's really important that you begin to prepare your teachers using that teacher preparation guide. Hold discussions, have meetings, show them how it should be done, and of course support them during that entire process. The second thing you need to do is to learn about the various aspects that you need to consider when you're supporting this transition. What are the different aspects your teachers will need help with? How can you keep them motivated? What sort of messages maybe can you share in the mornings, maybe in the afternoons? Begin to think like that, begin to plan it. Because if you don't plan for something, then it's very likely that you will not even begin to do it. So plan it and then plan for implementation. Once again, how are you going to transition your teachers into this process? What sort of conversations are you going to be having? How will you show them the guides? How do you explain the guides? What are the action steps that they need to do? Secondly, how do you create a positive environment even during this, difficult in a sense transition period, because everything is difficult till you get it done. When you get it done, then it's no longer difficult. It's just something that you have done, right? So during this process, how do you stay positive as a school leader? How do you motivate your school team? Remember, together, everyone achieves more. So in supporting them to achieve more, ultimately, you achieve more. So you need to look at the various aspects. You need to think about it, and then you need to think about the kind of support that they need, which you can provide for your school team. This is not something that can be done by just one person. It is something that everybody puts hands together to do. And this toolkit is a support for you. Preparing your teachers is a three-part process. Part A is setting the expectations. Part B is equipping the teachers. Part C is managing teacher motivation. If the expectations are not set, if they are not clear, if they are not communicated properly, then it is almost impossible to equip the teachers because they do not even understand what they are meant to be doing. It is also almost impossible to create the tools, the systems, to set in motion the mechanism that feeds that process of equipping the teachers. So setting clear expectations is the first step. Once the teachers are being equipped, they can link the tools that they are given with the expectations, and they can begin to draw parallels from these expectations to the outcomes that they need to begin to produce, right? And then part C is managing teacher motivation. This process is not a very easy process, but it is doable. One way to make it easier and to make it something that is really easy and seamless is to manage teacher motivation. Keep them motivated, understanding the fact that you need them in your corner to get this done. So don't shout at them, don't push them. Of course, there's some level of pushing that is needed, but you need to push them only because you have set the expectations and you have equipped them. If you're asking them to do something they're not ready to do and they don't even know what to do, they're going to be demotivated. And at the end of the day, it's going to be counterproductive. So once again, in preparing your teachers, think about these three things: setting expectations, clear expectations that are communicated, equipping the teachers, and managing teacher motivation. The first part that we're going to be looking at is setting expectations. Remember, it needs to be clear. Now, some of the questions your teachers might have is, how are we going to work? If I'm not working in school, where exactly will I work? When do I need to resume at the office? Will I need to meet with everybody, or will I need to have one-on-one meetings with you? What exactly will I be doing during these meeting sessions? What should I do when I'm at home? When exactly do you need me to check in, give feedback, all of these things? It's the new working arrangement that they need to be clear about. So you need to share all the details that you know. You might not have all the answers right now, but as many answers as you have, share it with your team, so that the expectations around all of these things regarding their working hours, regarding their closing hours, regarding meetings, regarding team engagement sessions are clear. Everyone basically knows what is expected of them, and they know how to shape their hours per day to meet up. It's important, because sometimes working from home, people don't even have a closing time because they just keep working. But you need to be able to help your teachers manage this, because it then becomes a mental health issue, because they feel drained and then they're feeling alone. So usually it's important to have maybe a virtual space where they can hang out. You can use again tools on the Google Classroom app, or you can even just have a Gmail account. And once they have a Gmail account and they go to their Google Drive, guess what? You can use Jamboard, and that becomes a collaboration tool for online meetings, right? So those are the kind of things that you need to begin to talk about to the teacher. So how much data will they need? Where do they get the money for the data? All those questions are details that you need to actually front load to all of your teachers, so they have an idea, a clear idea of the expectations. The second thing you need to begin to look at with your teachers, once again, remember, I always say do this with your teachers, is what are the class learning goals? This academic year, what are we focusing on? What are the short-term strategies that we're going to transition into long-term strategies? Hopefully by this time they've actually had the time to look through, had some time to look through the curriculum. They've begun to break them down into bite sizes. They've sat down and said, oh, these are our prioritized really fundamental learning outcomes that we need to be focusing on. So hopefully by this time all that is already done, right? So then you need to begin to look at goals per class. So on Monday, on Tuesday, what are the different things that we need to be doing? Break it down, let it be that clear, so that it is easy for them to assess it, right? If it's so big, so huge, sometimes people don't know what they need to do every single day to meet up with that really huge humongous goal. So break it down into class learning goals for the academic year. Help people understand and connect with what they need to be doing. If they need to be connecting with some other teachers as well, it's a great time to talk about this at this time, so that they begin to form those connections and they begin to actually set expectations for themselves and the kind of teaching they need to be engaged in per class. All right. The third thing we need to be looking at this time is a communication plan, right? The children are going to be working from home. So it is very important that parental support is activated. That's high level parental support. Now, some parents might kick against this. So how do you support your teachers to convince the parents of their role? Not saying that we are giving you the responsibility, no, but explaining it to the parents to understand that, you know what, I've prepared my teacher, my students. My learning is clear. My students understand the expectations because this is what I've told them to do. The videos are easy for the children to use. Lagos Learn Together website is easy to use. Everything, all the schedules are clear, and that's what helps you with parent communication. So all of these things are tools, resources, right, that you need to help the teachers with. Help them understand the working arrangements, like I said at the beginning. That's number one. So even when they have a question, they know when to run to. Help them understand the learning goals, so that these learning goals can then can be used as a communication plan when they're discussing with the parents. When things are unclear, it is difficult to pass it across to somebody else. Parents usually have a lot of questions. And if your teachers cannot respond to these questions appropriately, then there's already a dissonance. The parents are feeling, can I trust this teacher to do the right thing? And you don't need that, because there's already a lot that needs to be put in place. All right. So again, regular communication with the families, with even the teachers are really important. But you need to decide on a strategy to do this with your teachers. Don't tell them, talk to the parents twice a week, 3 times a week, every day of the week. No. Let them sit down based on the learning goals, based on the working arrangement, based on the learning outcomes and what needs to be done. Let them sit down and let them actually be the ones that prepare a communication plan. Of course, you need to approve it. You need to be part of that plan. But let the teachers actually begin to learn how to take charge of these things, because there are some things that you're not going to be able to do for them. And so equipping them with these tools, with these kind of skill sets are important when they need to begin to prepare their remote and blended teaching plan. This is a really good resource, really good resource. And what you want to do is to support your teachers to use this resource. What it contains are key messages that you need to share with your teachers. It helps with the most important aspects of the transition. And once your teachers have a firm grasp of what they can use this resource for, how they can use this resource, this particular one on your screen, it just makes planning easier. So you need, as the leader, to take time and review it. And then in the notes, write what you're going to say to each teacher by grade level, even by subject, and maybe by day, so that you also have a clear plan of how you're going to talk with your teachers, so that you don't go into the session and then you're sounding vague and a little confused. That will create another level of confusion, which really should not be happening. So talking to your teachers about planning for remote or blended learning, these are the tools that we have prepared for you. When you are talking to them about engaging learners and parents, I beg your pardon, in the process, these are the things that they need to be looking at. How about motivating the teachers and focusing on well-being? Again, these are the things that they need to be looking at. Talking to your teachers about managing their work and themselves so that they do not break down. Guess what? We have put together a list out for you as well. So this entire checklist, this entire tool is a huge and really important resource for you. Take time, review it, know what needs to be done, and then you can actually then begin to institute a proper framework that your teachers can rely on. All right, create a safe space for your teachers, okay, so that when they have questions they can ask. Help them know where this safe space is. They can all open Gmail accounts so that they can all access the free Google tools. There is, of course, Lagos Learn Together website. So all of these, by the time you begin to explain it to the teachers, it makes the work easier, and they're not worried about what needs to be done and about how it needs to be done and about if they are going to be equipped to do this. Take time out, review this particular tool such that you are prepared, and then you can equip your teachers appropriately. One critical part when you think about equipping teachers, you think data. For teachers to actually be equipped to do the work they need to do, they need data. So you need to then say, how can I equip my teachers to know what help can be provided to the community? You need to do something called an access survey. It is important that you know exactly what your community has. For example, who has WhatsApp? Who has a smartphone? Who has a radio? Who has a TV? If you cannot answer these questions, then it is almost impossible to create a functional plan. And remember, we are talking functionality. It needs to be functional, or it will be useless to your school community. One way to do this, a very easy way, is to involve community champions. Who are your community champions is the question. Your community champions are those groups of people within your community. They could be teachers, they could be parents, they could be students that can help you find the pulse, and come back to you with that information about your community. It will let you know, oh, these families have a smartphone. These families have a smartphone, but they have problem with data. These families, there are many of them and they have only one smartphone. All this kind of information begins to help you with your planning. Once you're learning, all community champions come to you and give you all that information that you need, all you then need to work on is, how do I create a plan that works for my community? All right, so it is very important that you gather data so that you can plan appropriately. Another thing you need to think about is your staffing. Not everybody can do everything at the same time and with the same degree of expertise. It's not possible. Different people have different skill sets. They have different levels, varying levels of expertise. They have different levels of commitment. Okay? So look into your team and do a SWOT analysis. Who can work well with technology? Who is great with literacy? Who is great with student and parent engagement? Who is fantastic with mathematics? Who is great at creating engaging lesson plans? Who is good with video productions? These are the kind of questions that you need to begin to ask. And by leveraging on the individual teacher strengths, you can maximize efficiency in your school. The strength of one put together becomes the strength of all. And the strength of all, when put together, can empower every single one. You need to think about your staffing very carefully at this time. There's no point in you insisting that the grade 1 math teacher should provide all the math lessons, when in reality they are better with social studies lessons. Why not have them create social studies lessons for primary 1 to primary 6? That's a more effective approach because they can focus on social studies and actually pull out the learning outcomes per grade level because they have all of that resource on their fingertips. You must think about how you can use the strengths of individuals in a way that benefits everyone on the team. Remember, together, everyone achieves more. Those are the acronyms of TEAM, TEAM. Together, everyone achieves more. The third and final thing you should be thinking about when you are looking at equipping your teachers is how do you facilitate necessary training, ensuring that your teachers feel comfortable enough with this new teaching plans and the tools that they have been given. If we assume that the teachers understand, we might get to a point where we have lost out and we have not even seen that we are losing out. What are the tools that you're going to give them? What do they need to plan? What are they comfortable with? How can you, through purposeful trainings, through purposeful and intentional interventions, equip them fully for this new role? It is extremely important. I will take the 3 again. How do you use your learning champions to gather data that would support your teachers in creating the best plans for your community? How can you, by leveraging the strengths of the individuals on your team, create a really strong and functional team? Number 3. How do you facilitate the necessary tools? Via training for your teachers. Yes, I said facilitate the necessary tools because when you think about it, all these tools must be used by people. If you're not facilitating the use of these tools, then there is already a problem in your community. And that problem can get bigger and bigger if you don't cap it. Think about these 3 when you think about equipping your teachers. And once you can plan with these 3 on your front burner, then you are creating a really strong team in terms of creating blended and remote teaching plans. On the screen right now is a resource that we have provided for you. It is something that you can definitely give your teachers. What it is it's curriculum meant for grades 1 to 5. It has content for 7 weeks. It also includes text messages that can go with the work to the parents, right? You can even send a voice note. So it's very important that you give your teachers this kind of tools. This way they are equipped. They're spending less time on planning and things like that, which is why the Lagos Learn Together website is extremely important at a time like this. Okay, so this, for example, says English. Day 1, the topic is happy child. You're looking at the explanation. Hello students. Today we would learn a new poem called A Happy Child. I'll read out for you. And then the teacher reads it out with their voice and they send it on voice note. Now look at the activities and look at the link right there. So all of it is clear. A student sees this or a parent sees this, they know what they need to do. They understand the activity and then they see the explanation and they know how they can submit it. So it's so clear and so straightforward. These are the kind of tools and resources that have been provided, and you may need to provide for your teachers. Once again, we have provided some for you, and then there is the Lagos Learn Together website, which you can also point your teachers to. One really critical part about this entire process is team motivation. And one way to keep teams motivated is when they feel like they're important to you as their leader. To keep morale high, you need to make your team feel like they're part of the process. And it's not just trying to make them feel that way. They actually need to be part of that process because they are critical to the success of the entire journey, right? So one way is to seek their input. That's the number one way. Make them feel like they're part of the process. They're important enough to you by seeking their input. Don't develop the plan and just give it to them to implement. They might do the job, but they might not do it to the best of their ability. And what I find is when you have people who are in the job, like the class teachers actually doing the class teaching, when they give advice regarding what needs to be done, sometimes that advice is really good because it comes from the point of I am doing this job. It comes from the point of I know what I'm doing. I know what is best for my situation, for my class, for my students, for my parent community, because I'm relating directly with them. So seeking their input is always very important. It is critical to the success of the entire process, and they become stakeholders, not just implementers of the process. The second thing that you can do is listen. Active listening. You're not just listening so that they can finish talking and you can walk away. You're not just listening such that you can respond. No, you're listening actively. Listening to understand, listening to, well, I mean, understand first of all their questions, understand their concerns, and then find a way with them. And of course, with support from the OEQA to respond to these questions and to alleviate these concerns. Not listening to the teachers can be counterproductive because they might be pointing you in the direction of a big deal that could come back and mess up the entire process. So you really do want to listen, you do want to take that feedback, and you do want to give them a sense of we are part of this, okay? You're part of this, you're important to this, and with you, all of this can work together. All right. Their challenges, their questions, they might really be valid, but if we don't give them a chance to air them, then we would never know. And we might be creating a process, a system for remote blended and remote and blended teaching and learning that is not even going to work for the community. So listening to your teachers is extremely important to the success of this entire process. The third and really important thing is creating spaces for connection for your teachers. There's no more staff room, right? There are no more high fives. There are no more handshakes. They're not even seeing each other a lot. Some people are only staring at the four walls of their homes. It can be a mental health challenge. It can be something that they need to actually deal with. So you need to give them an outlet where they can chat, they can laugh, they can share jokes, and it can be done virtually. Okay, you can create, for example, a Facebook group. You can create a WhatsApp platform that is fun and interesting. You can decide to have a Zoom call where everybody is sharing jokes and everybody has a bottle of water beside them or a bottle of a drink, something that is fun and nice. And that kind of gives them a sense of, oh, this staff meeting is great. It's not all the time that we're getting caned, so to speak, when they come into the staff sessions. All right. So hold virtual spaces that they're fun. Teachers can come together. They can learn from one another. They can solve issues. They can ask questions from their teammates like they typically would if there was in-person attendance in the school. It's really important that your teachers stay motivated. And the chief motivator is you. I particularly love this tool because it's a teacher preparation guide. So you as the school leader will actually use this particular tool to plan and prepare for your teachers in areas concerning setting expectations, equipping your teachers, and managing teacher motivation. If you look through it, it actually clearly spells out what will be the new working arrangement when we're looking at what setting expectations, what will be the new learning goals for each class. Again, clearly spelled out. How will teachers be expected to communicate with the parents? That is in setting expectations. And of course, by the time you're putting this together, you might find that there are more expectations you need to set. There's nothing wrong in you extending these roles and just adding them in. The more clear your expectations can be, the better it is in terms of implementation. So don't be limited by just the fact that we gave you three checklists, a checklist of three. No. Extend it if you have to. What is your context? What happens and is valid for your context is the most important in this entire situation, because that is how you create a plan that works specifically for your unique set of circumstances. Okay, and then you look at equipping teachers right here. Equipping teachers. When you think about equipping teachers, what sort of technology are your teachers already using, right? What is the easiest way for them? Does it make sense to have a Zoom call when they're not necessarily on Zoom, or they're not even versatile enough? Maybe teach them on WhatsApp first what they need to do on Zoom before you tell them to come to Zoom, right? How about the tools that the school needs to provide so the teachers can work? All of these things you need to begin to look at when you think of equipping your teachers. And of course, having that conversation with your teachers, asking them questions, getting feedback would help you. Remember your champion. You need your community champion so that all this data can be pulled together and you can use it in setting of expectations and in equipping your teachers. And then of course, you're looking at teacher motivation. What are the different things that you need to be doing? How involved are the teachers? How will they contribute? Not just the process, but even the medium. You need to plan for all of that. How will the teachers be able to share their ongoing issues? Again, what is the medium via which the teachers can, again, engage, connect? You must think about all of these things. So I will advise that you take some time to look through this particular toolkit and extend it if you have to, edit it if you have to, but most importantly, make it work for your particular situation as you begin to prepare your teachers towards creating a remote and blended learning plan. Wow, we're back here. Closing reflection. You need to think about all that you have learned so far. Which part of this toolkit has really been difficult for you in understanding? What part do you feel extremely confident about? When you think about preparing teachers, so you're thinking about setting expectations and equipping them, which one are you confident about? You need to answer these questions, because that is how the Office of Education Quality Assurance, in conjunction with Holistic Business Solutions and global school leaders, can support you. So you must ask yourself, what am I confident about? What can I do? What can I really do? Do I know how to set expectations for the teachers? Do I know how to equip them? How about all the training my teachers need to go through? Can I truly do this? And be honest. Because it is when you let us know the issues and the challenges that you have or might be facing that we can deploy the resources that will support you. The second thing you need to be asking yourself is, what do you think would be the most important thing to do to keep your team motivated? Is it everybody that needs to contribute? When do they need to contribute? How do they need to contribute? What medium will they be contributing on, right? So you need to begin to ask all of these questions. Is it maybe by having year one work together via, like I said, Jamboard, having particular WhatsApp groups for them so that they feel free with themselves? Think about all of these things. How do I make this work? How do I keep my team motivated? Those are questions that you need to begin to ask yourself. And then finally, what can you do right now? It's not about the humongous outcomes. No, it's about the tiny steps that you do consistently every day that lead to that humongous goal, to conquering that mountain. How can you begin to prepare for your teacher transition today? You need to ask yourself that question, and you need to write something down. And most importantly, you need to begin the process of ensuring that your teachers are ready for what's ahead.